All right, we're going to start now with talking about the real world. And before we do that, I just want to summarize a different way of looking at this with an analogy. And the analogy being a frequency vibration. All right, when you're in the wrong mind, you're at a very low frequency vibration that's very dense. All right, and when you go to your right mind, the frequency vibration is up here, and it's not a dense frequency. What everybody wants to do with the Course is to bring this frequency vibration down to here. And what the Course keeps saying is you have to bring your illusions to the truth. You have to rise to that frequency, in other words. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind as we now proceed with the borderland. Because the temptation would always be to try and drag this frequency down, which is bringing the truth to the illusion, and it doesn't work. So just keep that analogy in mind as we talk about the real world now.
Basically, just to stay with that symbol, the frequency of the real world is a totally unified one. There's nothing discordant or dissonant about it. The Course refers to the Song of Heaven or the Song of Prayer in the pamphlet, to the Mighty Chorus, to the Love of God, etc., to the Forgotten Song. All these would be different ways of expressing that same symbol. It basically is a song of oneness. So there is no duality in that song, and certainly there's no dissonance or anything discordant. When you're in that space, which is what we'll be talking about now for the rest of the workshop, then you are aware of all the dissonance that's still within the dream, but it's not your dream, and it's not your dissonance. And that puts you in a wonderful position to be helpful, because then you, like Jesus, become that unified frequency or that unified thought, which is the Holy Spirit. And then you not only are teaching the correction, you become the correction. And then you are up here calling everyone else to kind of climb up the ladder. And basically, that's the only way we could help or heal anyone, is to really remind them of who they truly are. And the real world, again, is of course this term for that state where you are still part of the mind of the sonship, but you are aware of the oneness of heaven, and you are aware of the dream of everyone else. At the beginning of the workshop, you may recall I had said that Jesus is not always technically precise with his terminology. The real world, basically, as it's described in the Course, I guess two facets to it. One is the act of making the final choice between the illusions or deceptions of the wrong mind and the truth of the right mind. It's when, as it says in certain passages, that the choice finally has become simplified. We've gone back to that original choice point when we realize that the ego thought system is simply the attempt to make the tiny mad idea serious, and that in truth it's not. So the real world is described as really the final part of that process, when you recognize that the only meaningful choice is between truth and illusion, and obviously you are now choosing truth. And at that point you are in the real world as well. So it really expresses the end part of the process of making that final choice, as well as the effect of that final choice. Okay, so again, don't hold Jesus to a strict definition of the term, because he kind of he's a little loose with it, or flexible with it.
As we keep forgiving and realizing that this is all a dream we made up, this keeps melting and melting and melting until eventually there's no iceberg of guilt. All right? If there's no iceberg of guilt, there's no wrong mind. So the wrong mind disappears. The amnesia disappears. We have to erase all the amnesia. All right, this world of hatred that was projected from the mind disappears. All right? The decision maker disappears. The tiny man idea is realized that it never happened. In other words, the total atonement has been accepted, which is the recognition that the separation never happened. All right? So there's no more split mind. All right? And that's what this is talking about. So the correction process, the final correction has been accepted, and one lets go of all of the contents of the wrong mind. And when you do that, there's nothing to choose. All right? And then there's one step beyond this, which we're not going to go into just yet with another reading. All right? But this is the real world as it's talking about there in this section. It's that borderland. And when it means beyond the gate of heaven, it means just before the gate of heaven. All right? There's nothing to be forgiven. One has awakened from the dream and realized that they are the manifestation of the Holy Spirit. All right, and then at that point, since you have no thoughts of your own, and you're not the author of a script anymore because you've let go of that, you're thunk. All right? I don't know how you spell that because it's not in the dictionary, but I think we can spell it T-H-U-N-K. In other words, you're not the author or the origin of any thought. You're simply a vessel through which the thought of the Holy Spirit, which is totally purified now, comes through. You're a vessel that the love of the Holy Spirit pours through. All right, and that is really what the whole idea of the real world is. And this is where the Course leads us. This is the final place the Course leads us, because this is the attainment of peace. Before that, peace came in glimpses, back and forth and back and forth. But this is the true attainment of peace. And then the Course talks about the last step, which we'll get into in a little while, that God takes and lifts us up. All right, and this is the whole place the Course is leading us to recognize that this is possible. And it's possible because of the help of Jesus, that we can't do this on our own. You must realize that, because we believed that we pulled off the separation alone. The correction will always be joining with that principle of correction, which is Jesus or the Holy Spirit. And that's how this is accomplished. If you try to do it on your own, you're making the same error again, thinking that you're practicing the Course. It's very important not to do this on your own.